Hi, I'm Brian Fraser, the minister here at Brentwood Presbyterian Church. And we're in the midst of a year-long project looking at Jesus, jazz, and worship. What are the dynamics that are going on in jazz worship services? There are 8 churches in the Vancouver area that are doing jazz worship services on a regular basis, including here at Brentwood. And part of that project is a group of people who've come together as the coordinating committee. Ron Kinders is one of those. And so we're going to hear a little bit about Ron's background and interest in the project, and then some of the things he's hoping that we learn through the project. So why don't we start with a bit of background, and why would you be interested in getting involved in a project like this?
Well, started out, my dad made some good choices for me to pick up the saxophone in grade 8. And kind of excelled at that and enjoyed it through high school. Kept me
continue to excel at that, I might say.
Yeah. And did music ed at university, and kind of went on into being an accidental accountant. So my music career took a different turn.
There's a textbook there.
There it is. So still doing music, haven't arrived at the levels that you could sustain a family on or anything like that, but have enjoyed the journey, I think. And have tended to want to always be involved in community with that gift, or with music and jazz. And jazz affords that particular opportunity with the interactions of the musicians. So lately, and you and I have been in discussion, Dan, as well, about how do we look at people that are maybe my age group, maybe not quite as involved in church as they used to be, may have been involved in the worship, doing jazz, but maybe not having the opportunities. And so we've been dialoguing about creating a way of reconnecting people with their spirituality or their faith or that kind of journey with their music. Mm-hmm. And I think a catchphrase would be, how does their spirituality affect their music, and their music affect their spirituality. Yeah. So that's kind of in a quick nutshell. Yeah. And when you ask those questions of people, or you have those discussions, there is a resonance to that. They do want to do something, but a lot of times they don't have the administrative skills. They don't have the venue. Mm-hmm. The instruments are all over the place. You're trying to pull 3 or 4 people together, and everybody else has busy lives. Yeah. It's not their main focus. No. But that participating in that environment and growing in it really helps them as people, whether as a release and a break, a mental vacation, or just moves their musicianship a little farther afoot or along.
Well, and one of the things about part of this project is funded by the Vital Worship grants from the Calvin Institute of Christian Worship, that's funded in turn by the Lilly Endowment, Inc. And as we were beginning the interviews with the students, and there's clips of the interviews available on this YouTube channel and in other spots, but they were finding that the musicians that they were interviewing, musicians who'd been involved in jazz worship services, but not necessarily identifying as Christians or as people involved in the church at all, the language, at least out here on the West Coast, that they felt freest to use and that kind of opened up insights into this was spirituality. And so we started talking about spirituality and jazz, but one of the issues we want to address is, how do we bring a Christian perspective on spirituality into that conversation? If, as Charles Taylor talks about in his analysis of the secular age, this is a world in which there are contesting meanings, how does Christianity articulate clearly a witness to its understanding of the story of humanity and the story of creation? And so jazz worship services enable us to do that with a group that may or may not be connected with the church. And Ron's deep connection with the church is important background to that, in addition to his passion for jazz. So tell us a little bit more about what you hope the project will uncover and explore.
I think, on the Evensong side, we're called to, love God and love others. And so the question is, how do we bring that to a greater audience? How do we get community more strongly built in the Evensong? Whether that's a glass of wine after, sharing time with the musicians or with the people that are here. How do we increase the age group? It seems to be a certain demographic that shows up.
Yeah.
And, a lot of that is people come for what they see value in, who's coming out of obligation. A lot of times people are coming because the musicians up front are their friends and family. But then they get exposed to the message and the Christian liturgy in between. So that's what I'd like to see. How do we explore that?
Yeah.
How do we build something a little more connecting than just the Wednesday night?
Yeah.
And then on the other side, with the kind of connecting my age group with that, is that a sustainable thing? And can you build community? Can you bring that group into the Wednesday night group? Not sure how that all works. I haven't really thought that far through. We're just struggling to get the time to put each component together.
Well, and we're continuing to refine and reform the kinds of questions. While we were doing these interviews, some of the coordinating committee and the students were downstairs laying out a series of possible questions that will shape the rest of the project. So I haven't seen those yet, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and they were centered around some of these conversations. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too is, how do we bring younger musicians in?
Yes.
Or younger people, in that, the people you chose to do the interviews were university age, and that's, how do they get engaged?
Yeah. And a lot of the musicians that are playing now for Jazz Evensong here at Brentwood, because of our connection, we have a music intern who's a jazz student at Capilano University, so he's bringing in some of his colleagues who are younger. The space is being made available for musicians who want to rehearse and have concerts and those kinds of things. So part of it is just generosity with the space. And then I can't help but think about your daughter Bryn is a brilliant tap dancer, and she's done a couple of jazz worship services with you and some of her other younger colleagues. Yeah. And so say a little bit about how you've talked to her about how she sees that.
Actually, Noah's going to sneak in an interview with her.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. That's great.
I mean, it's important for me as a dad to have her integrate beliefs with her music.
Yeah.
Right. And they go hand in hand. I think it's pretty hard to separate it, but maybe not as much on a conscious level. So, sure. I think the big thing about that is there was the opportunity. There was a space. But Evensong was a going concern, and we were able to slot in for one of those evenings in the context of the Christian message, I guess, or the Christian framework. And so that was good. And then we had Daniel on piano and Marcus on bass. And Manuel on drums, and it was came together quickly, and it was great. We all had a good time. The people that came, some people had never experienced tap dance in an improvisational way.
It was wonderful.
So that was great as a dad-daughter thing, but also expose people and expose tap dance to it goes back to Bunny Briggs, I guess. Who did tap dance.
Duke Ellington's Sacred Concert.
So it's not foreign to it.
It's not foreign, but it doesn't happen a lot, and I love it. And I like the way you talked about the idea of creating the opportunity for that to happen. And who knows what the Spirit's going to do with that opportunity. But at least the seeds are sown there.
Yeah, and that goes back to Daniel and my conversation about creating space for the Spirit to move in those situations. And what that space looks like, it can be anything.
We'll find out.
We'll find out.
Thanks so much for being part of this.
You're welcome.
And for taking this time to do the interview. Look forward to the next 8 or 9 months.
Yes.
All right.
Lots
Thanks.
going on.